Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. Welcome to Unbreaking You. This is the Healing Garden, and it is a massive, like it's an umbrella thing underneath the Healing Garden. The channel is Unbreaking You, which is basically all of my playlists and podcasts that I run through my series for the Healing Garden. This one is a new playlist. It is going to be turned over to a podcast later. I just don't feel like going through all the documentation right now to set it up. So I'm going to start out right off as a playlist. This is the Philosopher's Garden. This is literally the classroom where I cover logic 101 and learning how to learn. Learning how to learn is actually a subject that people don't realize is out there. It's not out there. We lost it back in the 4th century. And learning is, when you're not traumatized, learning is done naturally, but there's way too much interference now, so that way too many people have interference with learning, and now no one knows how to learn. And when you study philosophy, you spend the first year of philosophy learning how to learn, literally, before you even, like there in Alexandria, you had your first 8 years, and then you get to this moment where it's like, okay, now that you've got the foundation, we're going to convert you over to philosophy, which was the entirety of school. I'm going to say that again. Philosophy was the entirety of school. It wasn't a subject in school. It was all the subjects in school. And it was the application and the combination of putting them all together. It was literally like, okay, these are all the ingredients, and now we're going to make a cocktail. That is philosophy, but there's so much misconception of what philosophy is. And now there's this emotional trigger when people hear the word. One moment. Elizabeth, what are you doing? Can you, I feel claustrophobic. Can you not build up a mountain next to my desk? Can you relocate this pile? No, don't hand me things. You know I don't like to be handed things. No, I don't like to be handed things. Please relocate those elsewhere. Like, I'm starting to feel claustrophobic because I got my space. And as I'm talking, she's like piling up papers. It's getting higher. And I'm like, I'm feeling closed in. All right. Now, when you get into philosophy, it is this understanding that there's like, you are now entering into the greater studies. But there was the first year, and you are literally given the tools of, okay, before you begin, we're going to teach you how to learn. This is not done ever. So people walk in not knowing how to be a student. This is where it gets so logically funny to me that I'm like, why don't we think of this? No one is teaching anybody how to be a student. So students don't know how to be students. So you walk into these classes and you're like, how do I be a student? How do I learn? So I'm going to be covering that, as well as covering logic. And I'm going to be covering a whole lot of stuff with you. And let me go ahead and get you the introduction. This is going to be logic and learning how to learn. This is easily one of my favorite, like I cannot emphasize to you enough how much I love this topic of all. Let me see here, corresponding link. So basically I take notes, corresponding link. I take notes, and this allows you to follow along. It allows you the worksheets. I'm going to have PDFs so you can download it. And one of the things right off I tell you is this, all the logic part of it corresponds with Wikipedia. So if you just go on Wikipedia, look up the words you don't know, and I'm going to be breaking down everything. I'm going to be walking it through. Now, I'm actually going to reverse engineer logic, which is weird, and I've never done it because I learned it so long ago and it ingrained so deeply into me that I'm going, okay, let's try and analyze logic, because I've never, it's one of those things where it's been integrated so deeply into my psyche that I just do it now and I just feel it. So I'm going to actually apply Triadic Healing to it. I'm going to break down my psychology and literally go through it. So let me think about this for a minute. So yeah, this is learning how to learn. This is really breaking it down in all the different pieces. I'm going to go ahead and, do I want to do a post or a page? I'm going to go ahead and do a post. And I'm going to go ahead and document this stuff. So we're going to do Logic 101. And we're going to call this the science of learning. So in the previous there's education, and then there's learning, and then there's the psychology of what's going on in our brains when we learn. And one of the things that I really talked deeply about was it is the indulgence, aversion, integration. That is where all of this starts. It's literally the practice of gluttony. I'm going to call it that, the practice of gluttony. And then so this is basically the syllabus, the practice of gluttony. All right. And then the other part of this is going to be logic and deductive reasoning. And then we are going to break it down with Socratic method. The learning mindset. All right. And the learning mindset is going to consist of open mind, abandon all prejudice. And then it's going to be, I'm going to say prejudice and bias. I am a firm believer that prejudice and bias are different things. So it's vital that you abandon all prejudice and bias. You have an open mind and you listen to absorb. And then for you ADHDers out there, your neurodivergence, this one is for you. Managing when to interrupt due to confusion. This is a big one. This is where a lot of people with ADHD and neurodivergence struggle, is I have to interrupt. And this is where we talk about sharing the conversation. And this is what sharing the conversation. We're going to talk about sharing. And this is huge. Sharing and the 7, 8, and 9th perspective. Compassion and empathy. This is big. Very, very, very big. Very, 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 very big. This is like vital to all of this here. So let me go ahead. All right. So let me just take a look here. Logic, deductive reasoning, Socratic method, the learning mindset. Okay, so let me just I'm making sure that this thing is all set up. And I want to make sure that's 1, 2, 3. And then open mind goes under the learning mindset, which is actually going to be there. And then we've got abandoned all prejudice. That is not how I want to do this at all. Oh, I see. I'm learning how to do tech. Just give me a minute here. All right. So I'm going to break this down here for you in just a moment. This is the syllabus, and these are the steps on learning how to learn. And this is where you need to understand economics. You need to understand, this is economics is part of this. Battery physics is a huge part of this, and that is under emotional transactions. You need to understand authority, power, and control. And then you need to understand, which is under consensual learning. The moment you stop having the consent to learn, that's when it's all over. And then, all right, so I think that's everything here. So I'm just going to go over this now. So the science of learning is the indulgence, aversion, integration. That is the practice of gluttony. And this is the thing, and I'm really going to emphasize the thing, that is how we learn as mammals. It is literally indulgence and then aversion and then integration. Indulgence, aversion, integration. So that is how we learn. That is the psychology of learning. And then there is logic and deductive reasoning, Socratic method, and the learning mindset. Now, the other part of this is going to be hierarchical learning versus, what do we call it now? I have no idea what it is called now. Actually, it's hierarchical education versus, let me go ahead and put this into Google and look at the actual term for this. Hierarchical education versus traditional. Oh, well, that's easy enough. That's easy peasy. Traditional. All right, so we're going to break it down. I'm going to explain to you what traditional education is, because that is the problem. That is the problem, is traditional education. Traditional education is garbage. Traditional education, we're going to set that over there. Hierarchical education, and then ladder learning. When you understand what ladder learning is and how ladder learning is very much influenced by indulgence, aversion, integration, there's learning. And then when you look at hierarchical education versus traditional education, it goes, oh, holy shit, hierarchical education is highly compatible with ladder learning and indulgence, aversion, and integration. Would you look at that? Really, 100%, they really are. Traditional education works against our natural learning. This is where traditional education is 100% incompatible with how we actually learn, which is why, and when that happens, traditional education leads to strengths and weaknesses. It is because traditional education works against our natural subconscious psychology of indulgence, aversion, integration, and ladder learning. So once you understand ladder learning and the indulgence, aversion, integration psychology, and how hierarchical education fits into that, then those three things work together in this gorgeous cocktail. And boom, oh my God, education, learning is extraordinary. In order to pull this off, you need logic and deductive reasoning first, Socratic method, the learning mindset, open mind, abandon all prejudice and bias, listen to absorb, managing when to interrupt due to confusion, sharing and the 7th, 8th, and 9th perspective, and compassion and empathy. Now, we're also going to throw in here geometry, an ode to Plato, which actually goes hand in hand with logic and deductive reasoning, geometry. Let no man who has not studied geometry enter these walls. Now, I'm going to be very blunt with you. This is where geometry is the bridge that is the gap between the prerequisites and philosophy. So you have pre-philosophy and then you have post-philosophy. And the two things that bring these together is geometry and logic. So I'm going to be going over the prerequisites, and then we're going to flip over to the actual philosophy. So first, we're going to have, we're going to look at, I'm just taking a look here to see how to best break this down. Okay, so we have the prerequisites for philosophy. And then you actually have the philosophical studies. And I really want to put in here, oh my God, this is like, so I just got a massive wave of nostalgia. Like I feel it. I'm like, wow, do I have nostalgia? Like my youth just flooded me. All right, so the prerequisites for philosophy, and then we're going to have bridge the gap. Bridge the gap with geometry and logic. And then the philosophical studies begin. So when I give you the prerequisites for philosophy, I cannot emphasize to you enough how much these prerequisites are very much hierarchical education and ladder learning. So the first thing I'm going to do is break down precisely what these terms mean before I get into the prerequisites for philosophy, and then bridging the gap with geometry and logic, and then philosophical studies. So here is what all of this stuff means. Our natural learning skills is indulgence. And it's basically absorbing one, maybe two subjects at most, and just absorbing those subjects. And it's indulging until you basically fill this massive thing and you hit the emotion boredom. Boredom is key. That tells you when you have had enough and you need to move on. That is what boredom is. It is the emotion that communicates to you, hey, you have absolutely maxed out on this and it's time to switch. Now, when you switch, it does not mean that you're never coming back. That's not it at all. It means that you have maxed out where you are, and physics does this. Physics does this twice. So you're going to reach a point of physics, and then you're going to stop, and you're going to switch, but then you come back to physics. That's really important because physics is the one that you're going to visit twice. Physics is really, I'm trying to think here, because of all of them, physics is the one that you come back to twice. You have to learn it the first time, and then you switch over and you come back to it again. Geometry is another one. Geometry, you're going to hit twice. What else is there? Well, no, logic is first. Yeah, so because you have to study physics and geometry and logic. And then once you get logic, you're set. Now you can go on. And you're going to go on to a whole nother category of lessons to be learned. And then you're going to finish off your schooling and you're going to reach metaphysics. And when you hit metaphysics, that's when you're going to flip back over into physics and geometry again, and you're going to continue it. That's where I am right now, is on the second wave of physics and geometry. And that's when you study trigonometry, calculus, and so on and so forth. So there's part one, and then there's part two. So boredom is really a key emotion. And you really want to master 2 subjects, 1 to 2 at most. You never want to do more than 1 or 2 subjects. You really want to be gluttonous here. I mean, really, indulgence is the key. And then once you get up to indulgence, you're going to want to avert. Now, the goal is to get you so solid in comprehension on subject A and subject B that when you switch over to subject C is a foundation for subjects A and B. So subjects A and B are very much the foundation for subject C. And you want to learn subject C. And then you're going to learn subject D and E. And these are going to become solid. And then you're going to learn the next one. I cannot emphasize enough how much mastery goes into these subjects before you go on to the next. And you become so fluent. You want to hit fluent. It's literally, and we do this when we learn a language. You learn English, you master English, or any language, and then you hit a point and you flip over to another language. Now, some people do learn 3 languages at the same time. Imagine trying to learn 9 different languages at the same time. It's going to and instead of mastering all 9 languages, you're going to literally spend 12 years learning 9 languages simultaneously. That is traditional education. Whereas with ladder learning and with hierarchical education, you are only going to master English and Spanish. Now you're going to learn French. Okay, now learn Italian and German. Okay, great. Now learn. And once you do this, you stack them. Stacking them provides you with a solid foundation. Imagine you are building a pyramid. This is the analogy. Imagine you are building a pyramid. And instead of building the foundation first, you're going to build all the levels of the pyramid at the same time. Well, that is traditional education. Whereas hierarchical education and ladder learning is we're going to focus on just the foundation. And then we're going to do the second layer. And then the third layer. That is ladder learning. That is hierarchical education. So once you understand that it's a mastery and an absolute absorption and mastery of these smaller subjects, and then not smaller, but these expanse. Now, another huge, huge element that is grossly overlooked in the prerequisite is imagination, curiosity. What else is there? Adventure. Those are the 3 learning. Oh, I forgot one. Big one. Joy. Fun. Joy and fun are the same thing. Imagination, curiosity, adventure, joy, fun. The other massive element of education is consent to learn. The moment consent to learn is compromised, we're done. Game over. That is vital. The moment you lose consent to learn, game over, we're done. You are no longer in the learning mindset. This must be consensual. That is vital to all of this working properly. So you have your imagination, you have your curiosity, you have your adventure, you have your joy and your fun, and then you have comfort. That's your first perspective. Comfort and courage. Now, it is really important that, and this is where you basically learn, rest. Learn, rest. And it is the person who has to self-navigate how much they should learn, how much they should rest. This is that gorgeous formula. This is the third perspective of learning how to integrate this. So you're going to see a lot of second perspective, imagination, curiosity, adventure, joy, fun. You've maxed out comfort and courage. Now, here's the beautiful thing. Consent to learn gives you joy. Joy literally fuels energy. So if you consent to learn, you're not going to burn out. There is zero burnout. There's zero burnout. You will start to learn that education and learning is fun. You will want to do it, and it will become your addiction. Literally, it is mine. Education and learning equals joy, and that will lead to lifelong enjoyment with learning. And that will fuel it. So you will not see burnout. There will be no burnout. There will be no exhaustion. You will not track the time. And you will literally become passionate about whatever it is you study. It is extraordinary. So now, this is the psychology of what leads up to it. And to get into this, you really need to understand the importance of imagination, curiosity, adventure, and joy and fun. Problem solving is a big key to this. And the reason why is because you are a detective. Students are detectives. That solve mysteries through logic and problem solving. And when you leave a student alone to do this process, education becomes the clues they need to investigate. Now, this is where teachers really need to step back and let the child find their own curiosity pathway. And curiosity is what drives this. Curiosity will drive and navigate the path. And it will be predetermined by their inquisition, their natural inquisition. This is how I found aerosology. This is literally 100% how I found it, is because I just let my nature figure it out. I literally let the instinct of my math, my logic, my physics guide me, and it was just my curiosity. So here is how it worked. It was my logic noticed, literally, my logic noticed an anomaly. My curiosity red flagged it. The illogic bugged me, and I had to solve it. My intuition told me which subjects to investigate. Now, you are going to get a lot of people finding their own path, a very unique path. And this is where I really want to see a bunch of students coming together. Hey, which path are you going on? I see this so clearly in our future. I really do. Where there's a bunch of kids at lunchtime talking about it. Hey, what are you studying? This is what I found, and I'm going this route. And when I was studying this, I found this, and it led me over to this. So now I'm studying Egypt. And then it's like, wow, that took me over to symbology. And now I'm studying symbology. Have you read Da Vinci Code? Because that links a whole lot of really awesome shit into ancient Egypt, which also brings us to Pythagoras. But have you looked into the Eastern cultures? This is what I see. And I see students collaborating and showing and comparing each other the path. I see no grades. What I see is teachers taking in, going, you tell me what your educational pathway is. Show us the educational path. You have to create your own. Now, they're there to guide curiosity. They're there to put together a calibration of a debate club where the teachers and the professors all use interdisciplinary studies to analyze and hypothesize what best route for the child, but the child must ultimately decide. They are now learning something else called self-authority. And, oh my God, this is so much fun. You are literally a detective. You are literally investigating the history books to determine and locate all the anomalies. For instance, one of the anomalies I noticed was this is one I'm currently on right now, a significant lack of any reference of transgender throughout all of history. Isn't that interesting that all of a sudden, poof, there's a bunch of transgender people? And I'm going, what the fuck? I studied all of the fucking history books and not one the last time I read a transgender was literally in the ancient scrolls. What the fuck? So we've got transgenders referred to in the Bible. We've got Sodom and Gomorrah mentioned, and that's it. Suddenly we have 2,000 years where there is absolutely nothing mentioned in the Western culture. Now, in the Eastern culture is completely different, but in the Western culture, silence. There's a little bit in Roman Empire, very, very little. There is a lot of it over in the Viking world. Hello, Loki. And I'm going, okay, all right, well, I'm seeing a lot of shit happening here. Where the fuck are all the transgender people? They've been wiped from the history books now. Isn't that interesting? And all of a sudden, here we are in the year 2023, and my God, is LGBTQIA on the map. Where the fuck have they been for the last 2,000 years? Because this tells me that there's a whole lot of LGBTQIA being wiped from our system. It's 2024. Thank you. That's real vital. Thank you. Yes, 6 days into the new year and I'm forgotten. 2024. So I'm going, what the fuck? This is what I call an anomaly. I had to go search for this shit. So I found the word luminal, which actually is the Latin and Roman word for transgender. And it was wiped 100% clean from all the books. Interesting, right? So this is my little, I'm going to be totally tracking down what happened. I do know that there were two accounts of it. There was also the priests in the 1100s. There was basically a lot of Christian hatred on homosexuality. And then I know that there was a lot of slander with the Knights Templar. And that's all I got. That's all I got. And literally, there's nothing else. Now, I already know this is not much of a mystery. It's because the Christian Western mind absolutely wiped it clean from all the books, even though it was very, very prominent. Now, the Viking culture had a whole nother view on it, which I love the Viking culture because it really it developed completely free of the Western and Roman influence. So the Viking culture is a phenomenal, oh my God, I love so much about the Viking Old Norse Scandinavian culture. It gives us so much information to see this is what mankind looks like without the influence of Rome. So this is what we mean by emotional pathways, or no, I'm sorry, that's psychology. This is what we mean by intellectual pathways, learning pathways. So when we sit down and we do homeschooling, when we sit down and we do education, understanding all the psychology that goes into it prior, and then being free to explore. This is pioneering. This is exploration. This is what I refer to as pioneers, exploration. And this is the best part, is the children now and of the future are going to find the anomalies and correct them to make it even better. This is where I love it. Oh, I cannot wait. Self-authority, pioneers, exploration. And here's the other thing. Because of homeschooling and this kind of a structure where I'm going to call it free learning. I'm literally going to call it free learning. That's really, really what it is. When you explore free learning, it allows you so much more expanse. There's no limitations. It literally removes the glass ceiling from our educational systems. Our current structure of learning is a massive glass ceiling that limits how much a child can learn. And we keep lowering the bar. And the problem is no one learns or grows at the same pace. No one learns or grows at the same pace. And by forcing everyone into the same group, you are doing one of two things. Either one, you are forcing fast children to slow down, or you are forcing slow children to speed up. And now you're getting into dimension abuse. Now you're getting into a whole nother level of psychology that causes significant damage to a psyche. So if you remove the grade systems, and I do mean remove the grade system, this is the path through philosophy. This is true philosophy. This is really what you're doing. It is an intellectual pathway through education. Now, I did this while I was also attending high school. I started this when did I start doing this? Let me go back. I tried to do it when I was under the parochial school, but I got punished a lot for that. I got in trouble a lot for that. I really took off in 1992 when I finally got access to a library. And then I was able to go into the library and supplement my education. And then in 1995, when I studied Thomas Sowell and I read Dumbing Down America, and I started to look at the educational system and how garbage it was, that's when I went, whoa, I really am concerned about my educational future. So I took it into my own hands. And that's when I researched education, and I found the Library of Alexandria, Plato, Socrates, and La Academia by Plato. And I found the curriculum that Plato developed in academia, and I followed it. And this is where I discovered, first and foremost, ladder learning, hierarchical education. And that is later how I discovered logic and learning how to learn. And likewise, teaching how to teach. So that lays down like the prerequisite. This is everything that's starting. So not the prerequisite, but this is really the concept of how ladder learning is. This is exactly what you're doing. Ladder learning lays the foundation for strong, solid comprehension. It allows a student to gain mastery, proficiency, and fluency in a subject before moving on. Huge in establishing a strong foundation. That's the first thing with ladder learning. So now, that establishes the learning style. That is the learning style. So now we're going to cover the prerequisites for philosophy. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to start there. Years old. Now, there's a grid of 3. There's 3 columns here. And the 3 columns are made up of, let me see, I'm having problems with, okay, there we go. The first column here is the age, the developmental age. The developmental age. And let me do what I want to do here is establish columns. And let me just get this format set up, because what I want are columns. When I do this, and I'm not sure how to do this, I just know that I want columns. And I am not seeing, I will figure it out here shortly. So the second thing that is under the developmental age is there is the ethical perspective. And then there is Plato's curriculum. Now, This is what I noticed, and this is where shit really gets fucking cool. The developmental age is identical to ethical perspective, which is identical to Plato's curriculum. The three of these things line up fucking perfectly. In addition, there is also the neuroscience brain. So the developmental age is the psychology. I'm going to say the subconscious mind. Ethical perspective is nature's learning, is nature, natural. Let's call it natural law. Plato's curriculum is his fucking genius. The neuroscience brain confirms the physics. Boom. This is why we do interdiversity studies right here. Because you need to know psychology. You need to know human development. You need to know Plato. You need to know philosophy. And you need to know anatomy and biology to see this line up. This is why Plato did what he did. In the first year of life, what is the very first thing all human beings do? The very first thing, birds do it. We sing and dance and music. So guess what the first subject is? Music. Drums. Now, let's look at the caveman. The caveman, the very first thing the caveman did? Drums. What else did they do? They told story. Story. Cave paintings are not paintings. They are stories. They are not paintings. They are stories. And they're paintings. Finger paintings. And that is the very first lesson, the very first subject that Plato says we have to master. Now, you don't want to shove a whole bunch of education onto a child. That is not what don't interfere with this. The child is already going to do it. Let the child alone. Your job is to be a student. Your job as a parent is to learn from the child. Observe, watch the child, follow the child's cues. Follow the child's cues. Remember, we're mirrors. So this is where you are going to want as a parent to literally let your child teach you. Because when you use your child to learn, when you elevate your child to teacher and you become the student, you are showing your child how to be a student. Because we mirror everything. Reflection. So ask your child questions. Ask your child. Pretend your child is the teacher and ask the questions. Why are you doing that? What are we learning from that? That is Socratic method. Do not say things like, you need to do it this way. Oh, no. First of all, that's narcissism. And now you are using authority to put down on other people. That's abuse. Pull it back and use Socratic method. Socratic method immediately is the surrendering of your authority to someone at the disadvantage, which is why they taught Socratic method, is because they understood the authority, power, control that a teacher had over a student, and that to preserve the child's mental health, the teacher would use Socratic method on the child, on the student, to rise up and put the child on a platform, putting the child in a learning point of view, student-teacher point of view, so that the teacher then became down in a humbling, submissive point of view that would allow the child to not feel intimidated, so that abuse could not occur. This is a very sensitive relationship. And when you understand the authority and the power control that goes on between teacher and student, it is very, very sensitive to this dynamic. It will be destructive if it is not handled properly. And in order to handle this properly, the teacher must become the student because of reflection and physics and understanding how we learn. Remember, reflection, mirroring is number one in all of this. That must be learned. Remember the mirror and laws and optic laws of physics, because this is where they really start to apply. This right here. So the second thing that we learn is dance. After we beat those drums, We do song and dance. That is the next thing we learn. We continue to learn story. The third thing we learn is imagination play, theater, story. That is what make-believe is. We become screenwriters. That is really what we are doing when we play with dolls. We are having puppets, putting on plays. And when we have puppets and plays, it is important that the child is the puppeteer, that the child has the dolls. No one knows this. The dolls are not dolls, they're puppets, because you are a screenwriter and you are writing script. You are in stage and theater at the third age. That is what you are doing. You are learning how to become the author of your story. And as I said, Plato's curriculum shows theater, comedy, tragedy, epic poetry, rhythm, music. That is what you are learning is rhythm. I knew this was wrong. I'm looking at this going, this is off. It's because I forgot the first year. That's what's going on. Just a minute. This is the fourth year. I knew it was off. I felt it. I'm like, something is wrong. The rhythm is all off. And now I can see it. 2-year-olds are the ones who do the drum beating. The first year is observation. Observation. That's it. Observation, comfort, listening. That is what's going on with the first perspective. That's what's going on when they first get here, is it's observation, comfort, listening. And then second perspective, now they have curiosity. This is when they get curiosity and imagination and adventure. They are explorers. And this is where they're very curious. This is why they empty our cupboards. This is why they say the word why. The word no. Oh my God, that's so vital. No is practicing self-authority. That's really what's going on, is practicing self-authority. Don't interfere with the no. The right way to handle a no from a toddler. People are obsessed with, oh, that's respect. Respect is psychological fruit that you earn. It is not something you force from somebody else. That is an abuse of your authority onto other people. That is actually you're abusing your power over other people by violating their authority. When they say no, that's actually boundary setting, and that's actually very, very good. That is huge. That is so huge. People think, oh, well, children are going to get spoiled. No. There is no spoiled children. What there is insecure children who don't think about other people because they are, oh, wow, I just saw the psychology of spoiled children, and that's a whole nother thing here, and I'm not going to get into it, but wow. Okay, so no, there is no such thing as spoiled children. That is insecurity misunderstood, and that is not what this is. Holy shit. In fact, denying someone their ability to set down a boundary and say no, no matter how old they are, creates spoiled children. Whole nother topic, but wow. So 4 years old is with imagination play, theater, story, make-believe, puppets, plays, author of your story. That's what we see with dolls. Dolls are not dolls. It's puppeteering. It's puppets. God damn. I'm getting sick to my stomach because I mentioned the word puppet, and I can just feel the sick in me. Fear conditioning from the church. Still there. All right. At 5, we continue to learn theater. Now at 5, we are starting to think about writing and reading. Now we are reading. That is the ability to take in the information through the written word. and through the exchange of books. This is where the world of books starts to open up. This is where we start to see fables, parables. This is where we start to really process children's stories. Now, here we are looking at the morals of, this is where Aesop's Fables really needs to step in. Huge Aesop's Fables. I am huge on still using Aesop's Fables to this day. Huge. Such a big deal. Now, what is going on during this time, and this is huge, is vulnerability. This is openness. Openness means, or vulnerability means exposure. This is huge. Vulnerability means exposure. It is an openness to receive. So the child, and it is required to learn. And this is the problem. This is what's going on in the psychology of why people don't learn if they don't feel psychologically safe, is because to be psychologically safe means you feel vulnerable, you feel safe enough to become vulnerable to receive information. So you open up and you expose yourself. But if you are abused during this time, you're going to absorb what lesson? You are going to absorb violation. You are going to absorb non-consent. And that is going to teach you that being open to receive is dangerous, because that's when you got hurt, which is going to turn you off instantly to learning. When the child is in this state, it is vital that the child be allowed to go back to comfort as they need, which is why they have to set their boundaries. This concept of a 2-year-old being told, you're too big for your britches. Don't do that. So much psychological trauma in that little statement. Huge. This is a 2-year-old who is learning their authority. They are learning boundaries when they say no. They are learning how to use their voice to say, oh, this is what I like. This is the identity of the self. This is who I am. And now you've got I remember watching a Instagram video the other day, and this little 1.5, 2-year-old was walking around. She goes, no. And she said that to her father. It was wonderful. And I'm going, look at that. She's using her self-authority to establish her boundaries. And the father got in her face and went, you don't talk to me that way. And I just went, oh, fuck. That is a child who is vulnerable, and she's learning, and she's setting her boundaries, and she's exercising her self-authority. If you want to teach your child respect, you can't teach that. That's a psychological fruit. That is not the time for it. It's instead, well, this is where it's the empathy. You teach them empathy. You teach them validation. You teach them respect for their boundary. Oh, you don't like that? Did I violate your boundary? I am sorry that I violated your boundary. I see. So now it comes to, how do you get a toddler to do what the toddler needs to do? I'm going to do a whole nother thing. That's over there. That's with spoiled children. We'll talk about that. But respecting your child when they tell you no, this is really going to be backwards. This is really going to with people's logic. Like, you what? When your child tells you no, you need to apologize. By showing them respect when they give you a boundary, teaches them respect. Parents don't do that. Not at all. So that is, like I said, that's going to go over in the parenting section. So we'll talk about that later. So in education, you've got your observation, your curiosity, imagination, your dance, your song, your imagination, your play, your theater. This is where we get rhythm is huge. Your rhythm, your theater, your painting, your dance, your reading, writing. This is all we are doing at the stage. Language, counting. This is, see, and I'm counting, yes. Numbers, yes. Real, and I would push counting and numbers more closer to 7 and 8. Very much so. I would push mathematics closer to 7 and 8. But that's really, Absolutely, that is, and I would couple it so that mathematics and art is absolutely a huge part of that. Mathematics and art is a huge part of that. Mathematics and art need to be like coupled towards, and art and music. And that's all it is. Mathematics and art and music. And then when you get to 8 years old, this is where it starts, is music theory. This is where you start with the physics. Music theory. Music theory. See, now I was, 3, language communication, theater. Theater prior to 8, I would absolutely do a massive amount of just theater. Theater, story, oh, very much. Oh, so much. So much theater. Theater needs to be done, nothing but theater at age 5. Nothing but theater. Because theater is what's going to get you public speaking also. I would absolutely emphasize public speaking here, which is exactly what Plato did with, oh my God, yes, holy shit, yes. Same thing again, music theory, public speaking. Public speaking really needs to be out there at age 8. Because that is when our neuroscience brain shuts off. And that is also, this is when the language centers of the brain turn off. Oh, I understand. Oh, do I understand? Yeah, this is where we need language. A lot more language here. I would start language. Yeah, I would definitely like just absolute language. I would do Latin, word precision. And I would absolutely introduce, I would say 7 years old at the latest, I would introduce logic and deductive reasoning. Which is, again, we're back to mathematics again. Logic and deductive reasoning. And then music theory, public speaking, language centers of the brain turn off. And I would still massive emphasis on the arts. Now, bridge the gap with geometry and logic. This is where geometry and logic come in. And now I'm going to explain what all of that was and why, because this is it right here. So the prerequisites. A lot of people hear music, they hear art, and they're like, okay, what is the purpose of all of this? And this is the purpose. I'm going to explain what you really are learning with all of that. You are learning how to teach. This is where Plato's genius just skyrockets. In order to teach, you need to learn rhythm, public speaking, theater, because a teacher is on a stage, story, humor and comedy, which is what you learn in theater. You need to learn metric speech, which you learn with music and dance. You need to learn how to be a bard. If you really want to learn how to teach, learn how to be a bard. That is what you are learning in the first 8 years of your life, how to teach. Because now, when you sit down and you start to really enter philosophy, teachers become students, students become teachers. And now, if you want to learn a subject, you have to teach it to other people. But if you don't know music, math, reading, writing, stage, theater presence, dance, song, how to be a bard, you are not going to be able to teach. That's how it's done. So all of this music, all of this imagination, all of this creativity was actually grooming the first 8 years of our lives to be teachers. Now, it's time to learn how to learn, because you just spent the first 8 years of your life learning how to teach. Fucking genius, Plato was. Now, the first rule of learning how to learn is open mind. You must have an open mind. You must abandon all prejudice and bias. If you want to sally forth in education into the world of mathematics, geometry, logic, science, neuroscience, biology, botany, you must be unprejudiced. Art is teaching. Science is learning. This is the yin and the yang of the human concept. You learn how to teach through art. You learn how to learn through science. They are the yin and the yang. But we are so busy cramming science and math down everyone's throat and throwing away art that no one is learning how to teach. And as a result, no one knows to teach the students how to learn. Now we have a problem because now no one is listening and no one is learning and no one is learning how to share the stage because we never learned how to do this, which is why we're in the situation we're in. So, open mind, logic, deductive reasoning, and geometry, Socratic method, ask questions. Open mind, abandon all prejudice and all bias. Listen to absorb. Manage when to interrupt due to confusion. And we're going to talk about that next. Sharing. And the 7th, 8th, and 9th perspective. Now watch this. What did I say? 7th, 8th, and 9th perspective at 7 years old. You are now learning the 7th perspective, which is nature's way of saying it's time to learn how to listen. Time to learn how to listen. 8, time to learn how to talk. And it's when neuroscience turns off that part of our brain. Fascinating, isn't it? It's almost as if nature said, you have to learn how to talk before you're 8 years old. Public speaking, language center of the brain. At the 9th perspective, you learn how to integrate both. You learn how to integrate both. Listening and talking, which equals sharing. Ironically, that is when you learn the emotion empathy and compassion. Now, you are ready for the sciences, and you are only 9 years old. The 7th perspective is fantastic for learning logic. The 7th perspective is really when we need to start learning logic, because that is when the human brain says, 7th perspective, it's time to listen. Oh, look at that. You're already listening. So says Mother Nature. Wow. Isn't this awesome how everything just lines right up? Great time also to learn mathematics. Oh, look at that. Logic is word math. Logic is word math. Ask questions. And here's where we start to learn Socratic method. So by the time you are 7, you should be learning how to learn. Remember, mirror and optic laws of physics. Now, the child becomes the teacher again. So all of that listening, actually they swap. They become the teacher and the student. You share it. Oh my God, I cannot explain to you enough how much Plato shared this. What would happen is this. You had the teacher's lounge, and then you had the lecture hall, the fountain, where the lectures would occur. So in this space, I am doing the talking. But in the teacher's lounge, that is when the teacher was silent and the student got to be the teacher. And the teacher would take the stage. So they would share the learning. And the teacher would learn to be the student while the student learned to be the teacher. And because it was this beautiful exchange, now we're getting into economics. Now we're getting into the emotional transactions, which, by the way, we learn at the 7th, 8th, and 9th perspective. Now you're getting into the emotional transaction of economics. And this is when we learn economics at 9 years old with the emotional transactions. The emotional transaction of the giving, receiving of human connection. I'm just going to say it, human connection. The emotional transaction of human connection. You should be learning this by the time you are 9 years old. Economics. So that 7, 8, 9, now you understand that give and take. This is the psychology of how it all just pieces together. So going back to what else you need to learn for the open mind, compassion and empathy. And that concludes the learning mindset, is understanding the power, authority, control of this exchange so that when you do to become a student, when it's time to sit down, now you're ready. Now, we're going to say it. Plato had written on his walls, on the entrance door, let no man who has not studied geometry enter these walls. He was not referring to, you got to study geometry before you come in here. He was referring to the hierarchical ladder learning of geometry is what's next. You don't start philosophy until you finish geometry. And geometry includes proofs and logic. Prior to that is the prerequisites of observation, comfort, listening, curiosity, imagination, music, dance, song, theater, play, public speaking, more theater, rhythm, reading, writing, language, counting, mathematics, logic, word math, music theory, which is beginning physics, and now geometry. Now you can study and enter these walls. That is what that line meant. Okay, 8 years old, physics, and geometry, which is physics, and proofs, which is logic. Now, at 9 years old, you can begin. And according to Plato, and according to the higher sciences, the order is mathematics. Now you're going to go back and revisit math. Mathematics, calculus, geometry, I'm sorry. Geometry, calculus. I'm going to put geometry, I'm going to put logic here with mathematics, logic. Yep, I want logic there and proofs. Geometry, calculus, trigonometry. By the way, once you get those things, those are the ground roots for physics. Trigonometry, and then you have physics. Now you can get into metaphysics, which allows you into time and dimension theory, which allows you into chemistry. I would say physics comes right after chemistry, metaphysics, time and dimension, and astronomy is last. Ontology is right after chemistry. Ontology. No, it's not. They said it's mathematics, geometry, and then we're going to do calculus, trigonometry, ontology. Ontology, by the way, is metaphysics. With physics, chemistry, time and dimension, and then astronomy. Geology is also up here. Time, dimension, astronomy, geology. Is it geology or geography? Yeah, geology. Geology. So history. I have not mentioned history yet, and there's a reason why. It's because history is kind of scattered through all of this. History is in story. It's really what it is. I'm going to go back through and put that in here. History happens, I would say that happens around 8, 9. And I really emphasize the Roman Empire, very, very much so. I would say I would do 8 around history. And I really emphasize here the Roman Empire and Scandinavia. But I would definitely put Scandinavia next because Scandinavia allows you to compare the cultures. I would do the Roman Empire. And then at 9, I would do Scandinavia. And then Scandinavia and Celtic. And the reason why is you can really see the contrast of this is the Roman Empire and this is Scandinavia and Celtic. And look at the difference. These are 2 examples. Now you're getting into sociology. That's really what you're studying when you're studying history, is sociology. You see here. This is, by the way, the precise path I found. Precise. Now, 10th, emotion, logic is 11. Logic. Now, metaphysics. Metaphysics is going to start hitting at the 6th, 7th, and 8th. That's when metaphysics really kicks in. Right here is when metaphysics starts. Metaphysics. That's when you start to feel yourself. This is when you feel the physics. This is when you really start to feel the physics. But you've already started physics because you should have already started music theory. Yep, which is right there. So there's you feel the physics. 7, 8, 9, 10th is really when I would say you need to be on ontology. So I would put 10 at ontology. Physics, same thing. Chemistry, I would say 11. I haven't studied that yet. 9. See, and then here we go here. So this is it right here. You learn how to integrate both listening, talking. Okay, so I would put geometry, math, calculus. These are all the same. So this is just like the same variation. So imagine, instead of us learning these subjects in spans of 1 hour every day, imagine doing 5 hours of this stuff. You're going to learn it a lot faster. Then you get into ontology and physics. And this is where chemistry is really kind of folding together in this. Time, geology, time and dimension. I don't know. I don't hold any value yet for geology. I haven't had the need. It hasn't come up yet. I know it's there, but there we go. 11th. So it's spending 1 year and then solidifying this. Now, this is, again, I'm going to say this. This is really subtle and simple. This is not a condensed list. It's just to give you an idea of what this looks like, because this really is it. And then when you get to the 12, that's when you integrate, again, emotional logic. And this is where I really want to put astronomy, geology. I would say chemistry would go here. Astronomy. Yeah. So you're basically stacking literally the sciences, so that technically, truly, the sciences are an expansion on mathematics. But you have to first learn the language. You have to learn all of the language of mathematics. So mathematics, geometry, calculus, trig. Okay, let's set that aside. Now you're ready to study the sciences. Now you're ready to start studying physics, time and dimension, geology, chemistry, astronomy, quantum physics, quantum mechanics. That's when you can start studying that. And this is in addition to, while you are still studying and learning the entire span that is story, which you've already learned, which you've already mastered. But a lot of children are not learning the arts first. And if anything, they're absolutely cut out from under them. They're not being exposed to this. Good God, did I had Broadway, I had musical theater. Oh my God, did I? I had so much musical theater by the time I was 12. Like, that's all I did. I was learning musical composition at 12 years old. I was doing musical composition. And that was, oh my God, musical composition is 100% mathematics and rhythm, mathematics and physics. That is what musical composition is. It is mathematics and physics. That is what musical composition is. Music is math and physics, 100%. So you've integrated that with musical composition, learning how to compose your own songs. And then you're dancing. Now you're internalizing rhythm. Now you're internalizing beat. Now you're getting that pulse in, which is no different than the beating of a clock. Bridge and gap with geometry and logic. So this is education and higher learning. So when you start to really, and again, you are also, this is in addition to watching and seeing what path children take as they uncover this. And it's natural. This is so natural. By trying to force physics and the sciences prematurely. And it's I also did botany and gardening. When did I do botany and gardening? I guess that would be geology. Yeah, that would very much be geology, ecosystem. Let me see here. When would I do that? Botany and gardening. When did I do that? What perspective? I was in like the 7th, 8th perspective. Yeah, that was 9th. Oh, very much so. That was while I was doing mathematics. I was also doing botany, gardening. I was doing botany, gardening. What else was I doing? Oh yes, I was splicing my roses. That's what I was doing. I was also learning their Latin names. I was splicing and making new roses. That's what I was doing. Yeah, ecosystems, ecology. That's the word I was looking for. I was doing ecological studies. So botany, gardening, ecological studies. I was doing all of that when I was also doing mathematics, logic proofs, geometry, calculus, and I was also doing Scandinavia and Celtic lore. And that was just like, yeah, that was huge with botany, gardening, ecology, which technically is geology. That is exactly geology. Then there was anthropology in there also, early man, again, but that was sociology. And this is no one forced me to do any of this. This was just second perspective. This is because I refused to go in a box. Truly, this is it. Like the box destroys people. The box is hell. And this is really it. So this concept is hierarchical learning. And it eliminates strengths and weaknesses. You have a weakness when you lack the foundation, and this is going to be huge. You see a weakness in learning when, one, there is no consent. 2, there are gaps in the learning. That's it. That is the only time you see weaknesses in learning. A child does not have strengths or weaknesses. There is trauma associated with education. Einstein hated mathematics. Hated it. He was also a musician, which means he actually was very good at mathematics. I do know that Einstein also had a severely abusive math teacher, which is why he was so bad at math. So if you have a weakness in learning, it's because there is no consent and or there is abuse associated with that subject, or there are gaps in the learning. So you struggle because there are gaps in the learning, which occurs in traditional learning because you're pushing to get through to a certain goal instead of taking the time to solidify a foundation. And that's really over and over again. That's it. There are no gaps. There are no weaknesses in learning. I have no weaknesses in learning, none. That is something you only see with abusive education. I've seen so many people who really are concerned about, what about weaknesses? What about strengths? That doesn't exist when you do the learning right. And if you allow the child to learn to their own pace, their own consent, when you allow their natural curiosity to take over. But again, none of this is going to be possible until and unless we fix the trust issue. And it's literally trust in growth, trust in learning, trust in our own development, which we don't have. We do not have trust in development. We do not trust in the prioritization or the value of education. We do not trust Mother Nature. We think we have to force education. We think that without law, children don't want to learn. And that is such fucking bullshit. Oh, that is such fucking bullshit. Human beings love learning. Human people love learning. They love it. We are programmed to learn. Oh my God. Holy shit, are we? The problem is learning has to be fun. Learning has to be fun and consensual. And it's not. So this is like the full, there you go. This is learning in a nutshell. This is it. So once you understand the spectrum, the concept, all of it, it just solidifies. This is like the ground breaking be all end all for this stuff. This is truly, truly what it all comes down to. It's absolutely just beautiful stuff. All right, let me go ahead. Corresponding link. Is that it? There you go. I'm going to go ahead and do another one there. And then I'm going to take this particular video and I'm going to put it on that link. Come on, change the stage. All right. And this is Logic 101. So this is really breaking down the hierarchy. It's breaking down how it literally, it's called hierarchical education. And this is it. This is how Plato taught his curriculum. And like I said, the sciences, I have to go back and put them in proper order. Now, he also had divination and astrology, specifically astrology. And I spent a whole 2 days studying it. And that's when I went, but that's it. And it was just like, really? The other thing, and this is it, is when, so this is the what's it called? This is the curriculum. This is the syllabus. But really what it did is then you take, and that's just 12 years old. Then you take all of these things and you combine them into this same subject, and then you get interdiversity studies. Interdiversity studies. This is the foundation for interdiversity studies. It is showing, it is teaching the different perspectives, which is something else that he taught. Was perspective philosophy. I guess I'll just call it perspective. Maybe I have two here, perspectivology, and I do. I have perspectivology, and then I have erosology and erosology. And both of those, they're really two different things. Perspectivology is interdiversity studies of all of the subjects. Aristology is specifically the 12 steps, perspective, ethical stages of human evolution, growth, and into metaphysics. So it's really two different things, and they are very much coinciding. They very much like overlap. So perspectivology is very much more of how the subjects all come together, giving you different points of views and perspectives. Well, and it's more philosophy based, whereas aristology is more psychology based. But I really hate to use the word psychology. Aristology really is the separate psychology, because the psychology that exists today is it's garbage. It's just there's no philosophy in it, so it's moot. It's the humors. Psychology is to philosophy what the humors are to the germ. There, like if you know what the humors are, and no one knows what the humors are anymore. The humors are what people used to believe. They believed they were the 4 biles that caused disease before we discovered the germ. And then we discovered the germ, and suddenly the 4 humors didn't exist anymore. And it became so obsolete that now it's just old medicine that's laughable. And that is what psychology is. Psychology is the humors of philosophy. Triadic healing and arosology is the discovery of the germ. Like, oh, here you go. Here's the germ. And then it's like, oh, this makes so much more sense. And now you've got humors just kind of, well, there's that. Well, we're not going to study that anymore. We're going to throw it away because it's obsolete. So literally, psychology is now garbage. It's obsolete. It's moot. It all comes down to authority, power, control, how all of that relates, et cetera, and so forth. So that literally wraps that up. So that is Logic 101. So that's like the syllabus of the program. And then I'm going to go back through later and I'm going to break it down for logic itself to understand, okay, so here's logic. Because that is really breaking it down to, we're going to talk about logic. We're going to talk about Socratic method. Yeah, definitely. That's coming up. Logic, Socratic method. I think here, what else is there? And then I've got the 12 ethical stages that's going on over at my the Philosophical Coffee. So that breaks those down and how they correspond to learning. Like education and mental health are like, they're the same topic. And because we are so hardwired for education and learning, when you compromise somebody's education and growth, you are compromising their mental health. Our mental health is so finely linked into our education that they are inseparable. It's astounding. And that's what mental health is. It is the breakdown and destruction of our evolution and growth, which is aerosology. So it's really fascinating to see how it all falls together, and it's all just like this massive piece together. So, all right, well, thank you so much for being my audience, and may the kindest of words always find you.